Hello, welcome back to the ULTRASCAPE podcast. My name is Josh Ibbett, and as always, I'm joined by Beccy Waters. Hi, Beccy. How are you this month?
Doing well, thank you, Josh. Are you keeping well?
I am, yes, enjoying this delightful rainy day in the UK. Actually, we spoke earlier because we've had a bit of a recording earlier, and it was lovely and sunny. And as soon as I went to go and ride my bike, it started tipping it down. So I've been that off. But it's October or November now. You're allowed to. But what have you got coming up in today's episode?
Well, later in the episode, we have our interview with Sophian. We'll talk about his Eurasia World Record attempt, which many people will know ended up in a Russian prison. So we'll talk about how he got to there. And his account is both lengthy and funny. So don't even think about turning off. But before that, we'll recap through the Arizona Trail Race, which has happened, and some quick previews of some upcoming races over the next few weekends.
But before we get there, we need to say, as always, a big thank you to Redshift. They are the title sponsor of this podcast. And at the moment, it's that dreaded time of the year, isn't it? Black Friday is coming up, and Redshift have got in there early. So they've got 25% off on their website at the moment on all those great products that we've been featuring, like the shock stop stems and seat posts. They also do, which is pretty cool, not many people know about, the pedals with flashing lights in. And when you spin them round, they go from red to white and vice versa, depending on which way they're kind of facing, which is a clever little product. You can always rely on Redshift to think outside the box when it comes to designing things. Check out Redshift. I'll put the link up on the screen and in the description. And thank you as always for Redshift for supporting us on, 14 episodes now. We're nearly through the year, Beccy.
I know, I think it's a good time of year to buy yourself the things you actually want before Christmas comes, and you have to smile at the things you didn't really ask for.
Yeah, well, if there is things you don't actually want to buy, I can help you. So I've been, if people watch my YouTube channel, you may know that quite often I take photos on the various races I do with my nan's old camera. I've got an old film camera and I take photos, and quite often I don't know what to do with them. I put them on Instagram or something for a little bit and then they disappear, and it just seems a bit of a waste. So I've decided to make a little, I think you call it a zine if you're calling on a kid, but it's basically a magazine. I'll show you on screen here now. ULTRASCAPE magazine, edition 0. It's 0 because it might not get to 1. But we'll see. So basically I've kind of just done a bit of a roundup of it's a bit of a sort of personal thing, a little project. Some of the photos I've taken this year, I did look at putting them on Substack, and it just didn't make sense to me that you take an analog photo and then put it on the internet anyway. So I've made a little zine. I'll put the link on screen. You can buy them. I've tried to make them as cheap as I can, basically to cover the cost and the cost of my analog photography habit, which isn't cheap. There's probably cheaper habits to have. But if you're interested in that, that'd be really cool. Hopefully it's something interesting, and you can give it to someone you don't like for Christmas or read it yourself.
I look forward to getting my copy.
Also, this is a nice little fundraiser. You may know that over the years I've raced a fair bit in Africa, in Rwanda, and obviously Morocco loads of times, and had quite a lot to do with a lot of the kind of East African cyclists. You may have heard of Team Armani, which is kind of like the top team in East Africa. They're basically, they're giving a pathway for the African riders to compete at the highest level. They go to the US and race in Europe. They've a lot of them have done the Atlas Mountain Race, but outside of that pathway, it's a bit trickier. So basically, I just wanted to draw your attention to a fundraiser for a Kenyan rider called Vincent Chege, and he's one of the top mountain bikers in Kenya at the moment. His first ultra race was the race around Rwanda, which he won, which is a good start. But yeah, he's not in as part of Team Armani at the moment. So there's a fundraiser to help him get to the Atlas Mountain Race coming up in February. So he's obviously a really talented rider, but obviously it's quite expensive. It's expensive when you live in Europe to get to these events. So if there's a fundraising page, I'll put the link on the screen. And many people have kind of raced, who are listening, have raced the Atlas Mountain Race, will certainly know about it. So if you want to help out Vincent, I'll put the link on screen, and I'm sure any donations, as small as they may be, will be a big help to get him to Morocco in February. So yeah, so that's Vincent, and I'll just play in a little voice note from him, and I'm sure he'll be very grateful for any donations.
Hey Josh, we haven't met yet, but I've been following and watching your channel for inspiration and guidance. You may know me from following the race around Rwanda, and I know very well that you support African cycling as much as you can. My name is Vincent Chege. I am an ultra-distance cyclist trying to make my way in your world. I got back from my first European race at Badlands recently, having learned many lessons. I am now targeting the Munga in South Africa and getting ready for assault on next year's Atlas Mountain Race. I am trying to show my fellow Africans and African corporates that a privateer model of cycling professionals can suit African riders like myself and hopefully lead others to success. I see myself as blazing new trails for others to follow. Please give me a shout out on your channels and mention my Mchanga fundraising page to give me a leg up for these upcoming events. Thanks, Josh. Hope to meet you one day. Asante, Kwaheri, Vincent.
Thank you, Josh. That sounds like a great place to put some money. We'll move into the news section of the episode this week. The first up is the Arizona Trail Race, which happened last month. It's the last of the Triple Crown Challenge races in the US. It's quite late in the year, but that's good in Arizona, I think. A veteran, Alex Schultz, who many people know from a lot of the US races, he won the Arizona Trail Race 800 miles in 9 days, 10 hours and 30 minutes. Karen Pocock won the women's in 11 days and 3 hours. She also came in 4th position overall, while Myron Golfman won the 300 as he's moved. Josh was just telling me before the episode, Arizona is now where he's based, so that's something of a home race for Myron.
I'm pretty sure Alex did all three this year as well. I think he took the Triple Crown, if I'm not mistaken. Potentially Karen as well. I know she was at the Tour Divide. So yeah, that's a pretty mean feat for anyone. Doing those three races in a year. Further south now, quite a long way further south, and the opposite side of the planet, down in New Zealand, quite a fun little challenge. So a lot of you may have heard of Joe Nation, who won the Silk Road Mountain Race and he's podiumed at Tour Divide. And his good friend Rufus Wenlock, who makes the really cool surfer cycles. They're kind of bikepacking specific frames. They look really cool. Check them out if you've not seen them. They obviously, New Zealand's a long way from anywhere. So they've made up their own challenge, the Shaky Isles challenge. So the Shaky Isles route is a north to south or south to north route through New Zealand, primarily on kind of gravel tracks and through the smaller towns. And they decided to do their own little challenge on it, kind of like a team pursuit on the track. Joe started in the north, Rufus started in the south, and they had a race to see who could get to the opposite end on the same route, but obviously in opposite directions first, which I thought was quite novel and quite a fun thing to do. Joe was actually the fastest in 8 days, 15 hours, 48 minutes. Going south to north, finished in 9 days, 5 hours, 50 minutes, which was incidentally an FKT for that route in that direction. Not quite sure if Joe took the FKT or not, but it did strike me on some of the various coverage and like the social media stories that the Rufus got a headwind the whole way, or certainly up north. He definitely got the short end of the stick with weather, so I'm not sure. Obviously, we're going in different directions. It's a bit of a lottery as what conditions you get. But yeah, it seemed like a fun challenge and a cool way to kind of explore your home country. So yeah, good work from those guys. So that's kind of the news at the moment. There's a couple of races coming up in the next few weeks. Actually, this weekend, the 13th to the 16th of November, is Further Elements. It will be the last Further event this year. It's in the Scottish Highlands, 700k, 10,000 metres of elevation. I think it's primarily on the road. Very small roads, mind you, in that part of the world. And some off-road. The key challenges there are, well, there's some wild terrain, but the weather can be pretty unpredictable this time of year. Having just seen the forecast, it looks like it's going to be on the slightly worse end of the scale. Some snow forecast in certain areas, but it's always a fun little event, and I'm sure we'll see some good photos and some stories coming out of that. On the start list, Mary McPhee. She's a Scottish rider, you could say local. She's obviously won the Highland Trail 550. She's taking part. Rob Roy Cameron, he's another favourite from the Further events. Alex Kopp, my good friend from Austria, he's coming over. Max Reis, again from Austria. He was 4th at Tour Divide this year. And Quentin Lille, he's been really smashing some of the races this year. He won Further Pyrenees. He was at Elements last year and finished 6th. So I'm sure he'll be looking to try and win that event. The dot watching is on Follow My Challenge, but the main kind of live info is going to be on the weather apps to see what they're getting hit by, because it could be grim. It could be beautiful and awesome in Scotland, but it could also be quite grim. So I hope they've packed their rain gear.
Don't forget to add the windy app to your Follow My Challenge and have a look at how miserable the weather will be. for them. Elsewhere in the world, arguably the other side of the world again, is across Andes. So that starts on the 3rd of November, about a fortnight from now. And that's in the south of Chile, in a region called the Araucanía, starting in and finishing in Pucón. It's a beautiful area of the south of Chile. It's densely forested and with lakes and rivers, big fast-flowing rivers that are melting straight off the Andes. But one of the most notable things about the area is just how many volcanoes there are. The route is 800 kilometers and it passes about 8 volcanoes. It's a gravel event and there'll be about 12,000 meters of climbing. So it's pretty punchy. And it's relatively short considering how far away it is. There's quite a few Europeans heading over there, including in the women's event. We've got Julia Elliott, Natalie Bayon, Marion Dvisnik, and Sami Sauri. They're names I think a lot of people know. Marion was first woman at Badlands 2021, so she's arguably the best placed to do well here, given there is a lot of overlap between Badlands and across Andes, and I know the organisers know each other quite well. Izzy Solari is a former women's winner. Then the other couple of other names that I think will be really interesting to watch is Alison Tetrick. She's a former USA professional road racer. She set the women's record at Dirty Kansas, as it was known then, now Unbound, in 2017. But I believe this is her first ultra. So she'll certainly be one to watch. We've seen a lot of men come from the pro road racing into gravel and bikepacking, and we're seeing a lot more women now. Elsewhere in the men's race, there's again a lot of Europeans. Alex McCormack is a name we all know. Liam Yates, Seb Brewer as well. And then Baru McCulloch. He's perhaps not so well known for his racing escapades, but maybe, Josh, you could expand a bit more on what he's done away from competitive riding.
Yeah, well, Boris just finished riding around the world. He went on I think it was an 8-month journey. It took 3 years in the end.
As all the good rides do.
Yeah, he's actually just put a really good a little film out called Mind Mapping. You might have seen the first 2 sort of episodes of that. So that's just come out, and that's really worth a watch to sort of find out a bit about Boris and his story. But he's got all those miles in his legs over the past 3 years. So yeah, I've raced with him in race around Rwanda and done a few bikepacking trips where he's basically just hammered me. So it'd be interesting to see how he gets on there. And yeah, Alex and I think it's Jesse Yates, not Liam, who's going out, but they're racing a pair as well. So be interesting to see how the two of them ride together in that event.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think Jesse was going out with someone else to ride in a pair, but they pulled out. So it sounds like he's asked Alex, and Alex has decided to go. So
that'll be really exciting to watch. Interesting, across Andes is one of the races that has been won the overall by a pair in the first edition. So we might see that again.
Yeah, well, they're both strong riders. But then, as we talked about pairs racing before, there's often twice as many opportunities for disaster to strike. We'll have to see. So that'd be interesting to look at, and I guess we'll touch on that in the next episode. But in the meantime, this is the bit I'm sure everyone's been waiting for. We spoke to Sophian earlier today, so let's hear from Sophian. So now we're on to the main part of this podcast, and I'm very happy to say we have Sofiane Sehili as a guest. Sophian, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that we can catch up again. Because B, it's good to catch up with you, and C, it means you're home and safe. Obviously in the last episode, Fanny came on and gave everyone an update on your situation. So yeah, it's nice to, hear from you and hear about your incredible journey. Obviously you've been released from custody in Russia, which I think a lot of, that caught a lot of headlines, obviously pretty globally. I'm sure you're catching up on what's been happened while you've been, in jail in Russia, but yeah, you made some pretty big headlines, and I think it's been quite often lost, actually, the fact that you did this massive journey, Lisbon to Vladivostok. Yes, it ended up in in maybe not the way you wanted. However, that's a pretty epic journey to do. So I want to start at the beginning, really, and. Yeah, like what was your inspiration and the reasons for taking on this Trans Eurasia record in the first place?
Well, in the past 10 years, since I started racing ultra, I took on pretty much all the major races on the bikepacking circuit. I was happy and lucky that I won some of them. And
Quite
I
a lot of
mean,
them.
at some point, I just like didn't really find the motivations like just to do the same races over and over again. You know, it's like I had ticked them off, like the ones that were really interesting for me, and I needed, you know, something exciting. And I had this idea in the back of my mind for quite a long time to try and set a new world record, because I knew about Jonas Deichmann's journey in 2017, from when he set the record for the fastest crossing of Eurasia by bike from Lisbon to Vladivostok. And I had this idea for actually quite a bit of time, and then it's just like I just focused on the racing. I just focused on the racing because that's what seemed more exciting. That's what I really wanted to do. But then this year, I felt like, all right, I don't really want to like go back to Tour Divide or Silk Road Mountain Race. I don't really want to race transcontinental. I never was really attracted to this race. Um, and I was like, okay, I need something big for the summer. And this the idea with behind this record is just like there's obviously the ultracycling challenge, but it's much more than that. So it's also like just like a really long journey through multiple countries, just like seeing and being immersed in so many diverse cultures. And so it's really twofold, you know. It's like the challenging part, and then just like going back to my roots of being a bike tourer, bike traveler. I mean, I was never, before the Tour Divide and my first ever Tour Divide in 2016, I had never raced bikes. You know, Tour Divide was my first ever bike race. I was just like a guy that liked to travel by bike, and I think, yeah, it was just like a way to go back to these roots.
And had it been like a lot of planning up to that point? Was it something like some people focus on these records and, you know, everything's totally planned out and, you know, the routes planned and, well, as much as you can on these kind of things. Was that the case with you, or did you just kind of, you know, just set off and, you know, with a rough idea and see what happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some planning involved. Um, I mean, you need to know, not necessarily like exactly the road, the itinerary that you're gonna take, but obviously you need to know which countries you're gonna cross, because some countries require a visa, others don't. Um, so it's not like you're gonna, for example, like show up in Iran and not have a visa. Like
But that was your
you're gonna need
initial
one.
plan, right, though, wasn't it?
That was my initial plan. And then like 3 weeks before I left, Israel started bombing Iran, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to change this itinerary, because obviously Iran is not safe. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, and it was not like super safe to start with, but after Israel started bombing, yeah, it was pretty dangerous. So yeah, there's definitely some planning involved. I'm not like a detail oriented person, so I'm not like planning everything and obsessing on details. I just knew which countries I was gonna cross, but then I also know that it's really hard to plan 18,000 kilometers over 2 months, and that you need to be flexible. And what matters is just like to make it to Vladivostok. And I also like the flexibility. I also like the surprise. I also like, you know, being able like to change course in the middle if I want, and decide that I'm not gonna go through Kazakhstan, and instead I'm just gonna go through Uzbekistan. And so yeah, there was some planning involved, probably not as much as someone else would have, but yeah, I mean, you need to plan for it,
Did you
for
actually
this
start with
kind of
any
stuff.
visas pre kind of brought? Or,
Well, ironically, I did start with the Russian visa,
well, there we go.
because my itinerary went through Russia once, and then I was supposed to finish in Russia, obviously, but since I decided not to go through Iran, I had to ride north of the Caspian Sea, and so to go from Georgia to Kazakhstan, I needed to ride through Russia, and I had to. It was actually quite stressful and complicated because I decided this just like a couple of weeks before leaving. After deciding that Iran was not safe enough, and so I had very little time to apply for this visa. So it was quite stressful. Like send my passport to the Russian embassy in Paris, and then wait for the passport to come back. It actually came back just before I get to Turkey. Fanny, who was on the podcast not long ago, got it back from the embassy in Paris, and then she sent it to Sofia, where I got it back from. But yeah, that was actually the only country where I needed a visa. It was Russia. Then I had this visa, and I mean, in retrospect, I realized I should have applied for a double entry visa. Then everything would have been fine.
So that was kind of one of the root causes of your issues further down the line.
Yeah, because I mean, I had this single entry visa in my passport, and then I was like, it's okay, I'll just apply for an electronic visa when I need to get back to Russia, because it was impossible from Kazakhstan, because citizens from Kazakhstan are exempted from visa to enter Russia, which means that all the checkpoints between the two countries are not eligible for electronic visa, and this is why I applied for a regular visa, which takes longer, is more expensive, and it requires much more paperwork. And then I was like, yeah, I mean, on the opposite, since Chinese citizens are not exempted from getting a visa before entering Russia, I can apply for an electronic visa to, well, that's what I thought, at least. I can use an electronic visa to cross the border between China and Russia.
Well, let's go back to the start for now, because we're already in Russia, but actually you must have been through almost, was it, how many countries in Europe? 10 countries?
I don't know exactly in Europe. I think, yeah, close to 10. I think probably like 8 or 9.
So it was
Exact count.
obviously Portugal, Spain, across France. You must have been pretty close to home.
I was about 100K from home.
How does that feel when you know you've got like another 2 months on the road?
Honestly, it didn't really feel good. Because I mean, when you leave for such a journey, you're longing for some exotic places. I mean, when I was getting ready, I was dreaming of like the steppes of Mongolia and the mountains of Tajikistan and that kind of stuff. And here I was in France, 100K from home. I was like, I can come here anytime I want. Like really, like literally anytime I want, I can be here. And it's not even like the nice. I mean, it's like 100 kilometers south of my place, and it's not the place where I go ride my bike. I actually go north because it's like much hillier and nicer and like good landscape. Where I was crossing was pretty flat and boring. So I didn't actually, I wasn't very excited to be in France, and the only thing I was like, okay, I'm really close to home, and that's where Fanny is. It would be it would be fun. Would actually be nice to spend one night there, because I'm not gonna see her for another couple months. But yeah, definitely when you decide to ride to Vladivostok, you're thinking of some really exotic places and not thinking of your neighborhood.
So I guess the Europe was kind of almost a commute to the real stuff, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing that you need to understand about such a journey is that you wanna go as fast as possible. And so you're picking the most direct routes, and you're avoiding all the mountains and you're just like riding in the valleys. And I mean, I had some good times in Europe. I really liked Portugal and Spain. Spain is always good. I mean, I don't know why, but I feel it's hard to have like a bad time when you're riding bikes in Spain. I mean, the fact that they're so respectful. It's also pretty empty country once you're off the coast. So I had a good time there in Spain, in the Basque Country, and obviously, yeah, there are parts of France that were pretty enjoyable. It is a beautiful country, and I mean, I was in Provence, I was in the Alps, so I was in some pretty nice parts of France. But then when I crossed like Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, I mean, the Balkans, it's an amazing place. But what struck me is I had been in the Balkans like a couple months prior to this record, and I had seen the best that the Balkans have to offer, because I was racing the Trans Balkan race, and yeah, it's a mountain bike ultra, so you're in these absolutely stunning landscapes. It's there's no people. It's just like these really wild mountains, and the scenery is just absolutely breathtaking. And I loved it. And like, yeah, a couple months later, I was just like riding on tarmac in the valleys, and it's like rushing through Slovenia, Croatia. It was all flat and boring, and I was like, okay, yeah.
It did strike me, actually.
It's part of the journey. Yeah.
When I saw the map, and it looked I've obviously done TCR a couple of times finishing in Istanbul, and it looked like a very, very similar route. You know, just in the flatlands, across Bulgaria, long straight roads, not necessarily the most exciting. So I guess I can kind of empathize with that that kind of feeling in that area. Again, especially having ridden off road in the Balkans, which is incredible. Some of the best riding I've done, I think.
Yeah, the contrast is just so it's just huge.
So I guess you went through after that through the Balkans, Bulgaria, and then Turkey. Did you cross through Istanbul?
I did, and it was actually my third time doing so. It's never pleasant.
No, it's a big place, isn't it?
obviously you've been there. When you won the transcontinental, you finished in Istanbul. It's one
of the most terrifying experiences of my life. We rode at that time where that new massive airport is in the north, and they were building it. And it was
relate.
Just like barriered roads and trucks coming by, and they're not so patient with cyclists out there, are they?
It's pretty sketchy, for sure. It's pretty sketchy. It's not very pleasant. But to be honest, Turkey was definitely a highlight of this trip. It was my third time riding across Turkey. The first time was really long ago, I think 2011. And I did ride in the middle from east to west. But it was, as I said, it was a long time ago. I didn't have a GPS. I had no idea what I was doing. So I just stuck to the main roads. And it was okay, but it was not like stunning. And then the second time was in 2017, and then I rode on the coast of the Black Sea, and I don't really recommend it. It's pretty busy. It's not very scenic. But then this time I decided to go through the middle of the country, but on just like smaller roads, and I really discovered Turkey, and I really discovered how beautiful it is, and how empty it can be. I mean, I had this ride that I will always remember, where I skipped one resupply because I was used to having regular resupplies like at a minimum every 30 kilometers there would be a shop, and so I skipped one. I was like, it's okay, I'll resupply in 30 or 40K, and then I ended up riding 10 hours without seeing a shop. I was like, okay, all right, this is wild. This is like the Turkey that I don't know, the one that is really, really wild, and it was like stunningly beautiful. And Turkey is definitely a highlight of this 18,000-kilometer journey, and I know that next year will be the debut of Nelson's race through the Taurus Mountains, and yeah, I think it's going to be really good.
I think a lot of people are going. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to be there, and I'm pretty sure everyone that I've spoken to recently is that's on the list. And
everyone's going.
Yeah, and having obviously toured through like rural Turkey with Alex Kopp last January, it's and some of that area is going to be wild. And we'll drink a lot of tea.
I think you had pretty different weather from what I get.
Yeah.
It was so hot. I had no idea how. I mean, I couldn't fathom like how you could have more than 35 degrees at 2,000 meters of elevation. It was like I didn't know that it was possible.
Yeah. It was in Kyrgyzstan this year as well, by Osh, which I'm sure we'll come on to later on. Beccy, you've done a similar journey, haven't you, across Turkey and Central Asia?
Well, I never went through Turkey, but I did go through Georgia, and that's the country that Sophian crossed into after Turkey. And I remember just loving it. It was like Wales on steroids. And I'd like to know a little bit more about your experience in Georgia, because you also, having crossed from south to north, you went through some of the flatter lands in the south. Whereas I think when most people go touring, they typically stick to the Caucasus along the northern side of Georgia.
Yeah, it was my third time in Georgia, and I don't like Georgia. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry to our Georgian listeners. It's not a country that I have enjoyed through my travels, and certainly this time, it was pretty horrible.
In what sense?
I think it often rains there. Maybe because it's like surrounded by mountains, so it's quite rainy. Every time I went there, it rained at some point. And it was, I mean, this time I get stuck in like some sticky mud, which went for a rough couple of hours. And I had this climb, this pass to go from Georgia to Russia. I think it's called Verkhney Las. And it's so busy. It's like this mountain road, but it's very touristy, and you have I think it was weekend, and I had all of the weekenders probably coming from Tbilisi, and I think it was probably the busiest pass that I have ever climbed in my life, and it's. I mean, I'm not really a big fan of the way they drive there. They're pretty reckless. And I mean, I don't know. It's kind of funny because obviously a lot of people that go to Georgia end up coming back and raving about it. And I never really experienced the country this way. I mean, what I remember of Georgia is all the dogs chasing me, barking, and the rain and, and the mud, and
you're not selling
many
it,
people.
Sophian. It does sound
really,
rough.
No. But I mean, I have to be honest. It's important because if you're just raving about all the countries, people are going to be like, no, I don't think that everywhere you go is nice, actually. No, I mean, people need to find out for themselves. But I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't like Georgia. I'm sorry if you're Georgian.
Maybe we move on then to the your first entry into Russia. So just looking at the map here, you obviously talked about how you entered Russia a second time at the very end, but it was 10,000 kilometers before that you entered Russia for the first time, and that magnitude is just boggling. That you have crossed so much land.
Yeah,
That's not even the western border, is it? At that point.
Yeah. Russia makes no sense. I mean, there's like 9 time zones over one country. It's like, when it was 7 a.m. in Vladivostok, it was like midnight in Moscow, and probably 10 p.m. the day before in Kaliningrad. It's like, this country makes absolutely no sense. This part of Russia sucks too. It's all flat, really, really hot, kind of boring. It's along the Caspian Sea. It's like this one road. And the Caucasus, you need to be ready for it in terms of like culture. They're pretty rough there. It's like Chechnya and Dagestan, they're like really rough people. I wasn't aware that it's not that's pretty insulting for them for men to wear shorts. So I was riding with my bib shorts, and then one guy started yelling at me, and it took me a while to understand that it was because I was not wearing pants. And then I pretended like I was gonna wear my pants. I took my pants of my frame saddlebag, and then when he left, I just put him back in my saddlebag because it was 37 degrees Celsius, and I was like, I'm not gonna wear pants when it's like so crazy hot. And then another car stopped, and like 4 guys stepped out of the car, and they were like, "No, this is you're not right. You're not gonna wear shorts here." I was like, "Okay, well, I still need to ride through this country. If people stop me every 5 minutes to bug me to wear pants, it's gonna take quite a long time." So I decided that all right, I was gonna wear my pants to cross. Chechnya and Dagestan, and so it's the first time that something like that happened to me, and it happened like almost right off the bat. Like I crossed the border, and a couple of hours later, or 2-3 hours later, somebody was yelling at me to wear pants. It's not really the kind of welcome that you want when you're getting in country for the first time ever. It was my first time ever in Russia, but I mean, Russia is a federation. It's a federation of multiple republics, this was just Chechnya, and then the next day in the morning, I was in a completely different part of Russia. I was not in a Caucasus republic. I was in Vladikavkaz, which is like a very Russian city, not populated by people from Chechnya, from Dagestan. It's a completely different religion. They're Orthodox Christian. They're not Muslim. And just like to be clear, I'm not saying that all Muslims are gonna bug you to wear pants. It's just like it's they're very strict over there in the Caucasus, and that's their culture. And I mean, if you're traveling, you need to respect the culture of the people that you're visiting, and that's also why I ended up doing it. That's not just because I just wanted them to stop bugging me, but also because at some point I realized, okay, I don't want to insult them. If it's not a decent attire to be wearing shorts, I will be wearing pants. And I mean, yeah, you're visiting, so you need to be respectful. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had a really nice dawn there because I was on the delta of the Volga. It was quite beautiful actually. It's obviously all these um, swamps and so many birds, and it's just a nice time of the day to be there, to witness the sunrise on the delta of the Volga. So, but that's bike riding. Sometimes you're gonna have 99% of it that's boring or doesn't seem worth it, and then you're gonna have these few minutes where it's gonna save it all. It's kind of funny. But I know why I came here. This moment is gonna stay with me. I'm probably gonna forget a lot of the boring stuff that happened, and then I'm gonna just remember this really really nice moment.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? That
Yeah,
that one
that's
tiny minute, or you can have a crappy day all day, and then you just get a nice sunset, and then suddenly it's the best day ever.
exactly, yeah.
One thing on, well, I guess this is kind of valid for all of the countries. Certainly, the further you got east. But how do you find things like? Well, firstly, accommodation, because you were trying to stay in hotels every night if you could. how was it finding that when you go into a new country where suddenly you cross a border and the language is different, the currency? How are you finding money and cash, or are you just not taking cash? And food and all of those things. Because I guess once you get to, Turkey you're familiar with, but Russia was your first real new culture. How does it kind of how do you deal with all that?
Yeah, Russia was pretty special because it's under sanctions from the international community. So I found out that my credit cards were not working there. I could not withdraw money. Thankfully, I was carrying a few $100s, so I could change my dollars to rubles. And then it really depends. Sometimes it's really easy. Like you cross the border. I remember crossing the border from Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan, and as soon as I get into Uzbekistan, there was a guy that was there with this like SIM card. I was like, yeah, sure. And then there was a woman that showed up, and she was like, money exchange. Like, yeah, definitely. I wish it would happen like that at every border. It's just like so cool.
Costs twice as much though.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're chasing a world record, you don't really care about that. And then yeah, it was like a little bit different going into Tajikistan. You had to actually look for the money changers, but the it was a bit more organized, which is kind of a paradox because Tajikistan is the least advanced country of Central Asia. It's very, very poor, and it's kind of this autocratic regime where the president has been in place for like, I don't know, 25 years, something like that. And things are, yeah, there's not many things that actually work in Tajikistan, but yeah, you show up at the border and there's like this little booth where you can buy a SIM card, and then you just walk around, you ask people where are the money changers, and eventually you will find someone that will sell you some local currency. And then other times it's more complicated, like China, for example. I rode to two different parts of China, and then in the middle I went into Mongolia. But my first foray into China, um, I was unable to buy a SIM card like the whole way, because you need to buy SIM cards from like big shops that only sell SIM cards, and they were not willing to sell one to me because they never see tourists, like, ever. And they just don't know how to proceed. Like,
Yeah.
they're used to sell SIM cards to Chinese citizens, and the Chinese citizens show up and they just like show their ID, and I was there with my passport, and there were like, I don't know, half of a dozen ladies there, and the counters were all open, and none of them wanted to like sell me a SIM card.
I mean,
And
China's
it's
something
like,
I'd love to talk to you about in more detail soon, because it fascinates me. It's
yeah.
one of the world's
And
biggest
so
economies. But we're
so
just
yeah, I couldn't find a SIM card in China. But then yeah, it really differs from one country to another. It can be like really easy or quite complicated.
and at this point, so we talked about obviously changing your plans because of Iran. I think it's probably fair to note that when Jonas set the record, he went on a very different route to you. He did a lot of Russia. How did your initial route compare, and then what changes did you have to make in this area because of obviously the Iran conflict?
Yeah, so Jonas set the record 8 years ago in 2017, and at that time, obviously geopolitics were very different. There was no war happening between Russia and Ukraine. Russia was still part of, was not a pariah state, so it was definitely easier to travel there. And he basically shot straight towards Russia, leaving from Lisbon. And he entered Russian territory as soon as he could, and then he just like
Through
stayed
Ukraine.
there. Yeah, and he just stayed in Russia all the way to Vladivostok. And even if it would have been possible for me, obviously it was not possible, but even if it would have been possible, it was not something that I did find very interesting. So yeah, my first idea was to go through Iran and then Pakistan and then enter China through Pakistan, and I really wanted to ride the Karakoram Highway, which is the highest paved road in the world.
Love to do that. All that area.
Yeah, it seems pretty amazing. The problem is, I had to bail on this plan because the Chinese won't let you ride from the border, from the actual border to the immigration checkpoint. Once you reach the top of the pass in Pakistan, you will need to board a bus to get to the immigration checkpoint on the Chinese side. And so it's not possible if you're chasing a world record. You need to ride the whole way, obviously. So I had to bail on this plan. I still wanted to go through Iran, and then I started chatting with people that had ridden through Afghanistan, and they told me that it was safe enough, and that I wouldn't have to worry if I was there. And then I was like, okay, I can research that. I can research um, Iran, then Afghanistan, and then exiting through Tajikistan. And I was researching this possibility when the bombings happened. That when Israel started bombing Iran, and then I think at some point even the U.S. dropped like this mega bomb on an Iranian facility, and then I stopped researching this option of riding through Iran and Afghanistan. But I do know that Steven Yarek, which I feel maybe a lot of your listeners will be familiar with, did actually. He was a little bit ahead of me. He left ahead of me to ride all the way from France to Nepal, and he did ride through Afghanistan, which seemed actually, I mean, it seemed weird, but okay, not dangerous, but weird in the way that obviously he didn't see a single woman, and he saw a lot of dudes with Kalashnikovs.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of travel stuff, and if you're interested in Afghanistan, there's a guy, YouTube channel, Mike OK is his YouTube handle, but he's just put some videos out about traveling. He was hitchhiking and sort of backpacking around in parts of Afghanistan, and I think it's important to watch that because obviously in the West here we get a version of the news. And I'm sure there's a different version, in other countries. But he sort of really connects with people, and yeah, I'm sure that's the beauty of bikepacking, isn't it? You kind of see the real country. But yeah, Afghanistan is starting to open up a little bit. I mean, it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but certainly people are touring there, and the Taliban are basically looking after travellers to a point.
I would argue that I think that's much safer for a man in Afghanistan.
100%,
A man
100%,
alone. For a woman alone, it's a much bigger risk.
I
wouldn't say it's impossible.
I have never heard
of
a woman like traveling through Afghanistan alone.
Yeah, we'll check out these videos from I think his name is Mike O'Keefe, Mike OK. Yeah, he touched on that, and it's very, very interesting if you're into travel in these different places. But it wasn't somewhere you went. Eventually, so you went the northern route, Kazakhstan, and then didn't you have a bit of a change of plan? You had a couple of on-the-fly changes.
I was riding through Kazakhstan. I didn't actually spend much time in Kazakhstan, but the little time that I spent there, I ended up being quite worried about the roads there, about the fact that they're quite narrow. They see a lot of traffic, a lot of heavy traffic. Many big trucks going from the Caspian Sea to Russia, going from Georgia to Russia, all of that stuff, and it felt like really sketchy.
It's a Silk Road, isn't it? Essentially, the modern day Silk Road.
Yeah, and it has developed a lot in the last 10 years. I was in Central Asia for the first time ever in 2017, and it was fairly quiet. Some of these roads were almost completely empty. It was a dream to ride there. But commerce has developed a lot. I mean, there's a reason that the Chinese invested so much money in these roads. That's because, yeah, they want to sell their goods, and to sell their goods, they need to transport them. And so I was in this road in Kazakhstan, and then I realized that, okay, if I keep riding through Kazakhstan, I was in touch with a French guy that had ridden through pretty much all of Kazakhstan, in reverse, coming from China. And I asked him, like, is it getting better at some point? And he was like, no, it's just gonna get worse. There's just gonna be like more and more trucks. And I was like, okay, I want to survive this trip. That's that's always the main goal, you know. And I was like, look, if I stick to these very busy Kazakh roads, I may not survive it. And so I decided I mentioned Steven, um, who was riding to Nepal. Is a good friend, and I started chatting with him about Uzbekistan. I had been to Uzbekistan prior in 17, and I asked him, like, how are the roads there? Are they still quiet, or is it like Kazakhstan? Is it like really busy now? He said, no, the roads are still fairly quiet there. You can, and I said, okay, I'd rather have a longer way to Vladivostok and take a few more days to reach my destination, but at least feel safe and enjoy it. And so that's when I decided that I was going to change my route, and instead of riding through all of Kazakhstan from Russia to China, I was gonna ride in Uzbekistan, and then Tajikistan, and then cross into China from Tajikistan.
Which didn't go to plan.
No, it did not. It's similar to what I was telling you about riding from Pakistan to China. It's the same if you want to cross from Tajikistan. There's this no man's land where they won't allow you to cycle, and you need to board this taxi. And again, not something I could do in the context of world records, as I needed to ride 100% of the way. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the Chinese. Like, I don't know why they just don't want you to ride a bike. Like, what's the problem with riding a bike? It's like, I actually really like the Chinese and China. It's just sometimes their military and their police and just their government, for some reason, I don't know, they're weird. And they don't want you to ride a bike. They're like, it's okay in a car, it's not okay in a bike. I'm like, what's the difference? But yeah, I could not cross into China from Tajikistan for this reason. Then I had to backtrack, and then I had to ride through the rest of Tajikistan, which included a pass which is called Akbaital, which is 4,654 meters high and is not paved. And then more unpaved fun in Kyrgyzstan, where I did actually meet a guy named Josh Ibbett.
Wow, Sophian, dreams can come true.
He was on his way to the start of the Silk Road mountain race, and I was on my way to Vladivostok, and I was riding my bike. I was actually not even riding my bike. I was fixing a flat on the side of the road. And there I see this tall, lanky English man on a steel mason. I was like, oh, hey Josh, how's it going?
A lot of people have said, oh, you must have planned that trip, but I think we need to say it right here, right now. I had no idea you were going to be there. I'd not checked your tracker because I was obviously traveling, and I was like, "What are you doing here? You should be in China. Why are you in some shitty, dusty pass in Kyrgyzstan?"
A couple days before meeting you, I also had no idea that I was going to be there. I mean, I had never planned on riding through Kyrgyzstan, but yeah, not being able to cross from Tajikistan to China, that's when things started getting really tight in terms of timing.
Yeah, because for the first couple of weeks or so, you were well ahead of the record. And I think foolishly, we all thought it was somewhat in the bag. Is it because of that detour further south through the Pamirs that you lost a couple of days and were therefore quite tight with Jonas?
I did lose a couple days before that when I tried to cross from Uzbekistan to Kazakhstan because the border was closed and I had to hop on a train to cross it, and all of the trains were full. So it took me a while to find the trick to board a train, which was to make a fake ticket and then bribe the railway staff. I needed a fake ticket to fool the military, and then I needed to bribe the railway staff because I could not fool them with my fake ticket.
You settled into Central Asia very well, Sofiane.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I did lose a couple days there in Kazakhstan, trying to find a way to make it through this border, and then I ended up losing quite a bit of time in Tajikistan, trying to get to China, and then the big I haven't really calculated how many days I lost, but you need to understand that when they denied me entry into China and I had to find another border, it meant that instead of riding pretty much flat paved roads from China to Mongolia, I ended up riding really mountainous unpaved roads through Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, and then another part of Kazakhstan, and I think it was much more than 2 days that I lost there.
Well, even that pass we met on, that was horrendous.
That was like a day of riding, just like for this pass. Yeah.
Well, we stayed in the guest house you suggested.
Yeah.
And you just turned up there. It was like, it could have been like a ski slope with powder snow on it, the amount of dust there. It was like 2 or 3 inches thick because, well, we mentioned China and kind of their Silk Road. They're essentially boring tunnels through the Kyrgyzstan mountains to put a new railway line in so they can cut out Russia. And the pass that we met on was just full of construction traffic, and obviously the roads aren't built for it, and it was just dust, wasn't it? I mean, it's a good job it wasn't raining because that would have been treacherous.
Sure, it would have been.
I can see why you're a bit grumpy now when we met. And skinny as well. I gave you a hug. I was like, man, there's nothing left of you. How was the food through Central Asia?
You give me a few Skittles as well. Calories to make it to Kazan.
So the bit I'm really fascinated about is, well, there's China and Mongolia. I met a lot of people in Kyrgyzstan. Obviously, well, the reason you went through Osh was because that's the route, and a lot of touring cyclists were there. We, met people before the Silk Road race. I'm just really intrigued by China, just because it's such a, well, it's probably behind closed doors one of the, I wouldn't say, well, one of the most sort of technologically advanced, certainly, on the whole. Is that the kind of impression you got riding through China, or is it still quite rural at times? And how did you cope with it? The language, the culture, again, all that, the food and, visas, all of that stuff. How was that in China?
Well, China is opening up to tourism. I don't know about you in the UK. I think you still need a visa, but for us in the EU, we don't actually need a visa anymore.
Oh, really? That's surprising.
Which is fairly recent, and it's pretty good.
That's brilliant.
It is. Honestly, it is. They're definitely opening up. And the first time that I went to China, it was very, very complicated to find a hotel because they needed this special license to host foreigners, which is not the case anymore. It's still not as easy as other places to find a hotel because it takes time, especially for smaller towns in China to hear the word that they now can and actually have the obligation of hosting any foreigner that shows up. So it would sometimes take up to 30 minutes for them to register you, because they're just not used to register foreigners. They're used to just like get a Chinese ID and then enter everything. I mean, obviously everything is written in Chinese on the Chinese ID and not on my passport, so it can be a bit complicated for them. Um, I really I really like China as a country, because it it you feel that you're in a very important part of the world, just like when you visit the US. But in China, it's even different because it does have this really, really long history. It was well ahead of Europe, like in the Middle Ages, when Europe was still fairly backwards. China was this like huge empire which was very advanced in terms of technology and just culture, and so you do feel that you're in a place that has like such a long and rich history. And the Chinese are so nice, so helpful. It's not something that we hear a lot, and I think in Europe we're used to seeing um, Chinese from the middle and upper class that are fairly different from like just like the regular Chinese that you will meet if you travel there, and they're just like really happy to see people that come to visit, because they don't see many of they don't see many visitors, especially if you're not in like Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou or somewhere on the Great Wall. And they're just like little kids, when they see from someone from Europe. There's like the so it's a really nice place to travel. It's not always very interesting to ride a bike there. Obviously, such a big country. It's like it's immense. There's like the distances there, they're mind-boggling, and I guess it was my third time in China, and I know there are some awesome rides there. Some places are beautiful, like Qinghai, which is a province on the Tibetan plateau. There's parts of Xinjiang, which is the biggest Chinese province, which is populated by the Uyghurs, which are Central Asian people. But yeah, then it's such a big country that there are gonna be really long stretches of nothing, just like nothing. And China and is one of the two countries where I ended up at some point having to sleep somewhere on the ground because I couldn't find a hotel, because it's very possible to ride like 500 kilometers there without seeing a town. But I don't know. I like it in a weird way. I like it in a way that even if it's not easy to find a good bike ride, it's just so foreign. It's just so exotic. It's just like you don't understand anything, and I think that's what I look for when I travel, and it's probably why I I like China so much. And also coming from Central Asia, it's quite a relief to get into China, because Central Asia is very chaotic. Few things actually work. Nothing is on time. Nobody will be able to tell you like where and when things will happen. And then you get into China, and China is very, very organized and fairly clean, and things happen on schedule, and it's in a way it's a bit more European, in the like non-chaotic way that it is. And so when you're coming from Central Asia, you're like, whew, you just like settling down. You're like, all right. I mean, it was nice to be in like kind of Central Asia adventure mood, but sometimes it's exhausting. And I mean, you've both been to Central Asia, and you you know what I'm talking about. And then yeah, getting into China, you're like, okay, I know that here things work, and it's a relief.
I guess also by this point, you are on a record attempt and you've lost time, so you're kind of, I guess you're looking at the clock quite a lot, and knowing that you've still got Mongolia to go, which isn't necessarily going to be as easygoing. But was that kind of a thought by this point? Because I remember your kind of social media posts when they came out, because obviously you didn't have any or limited connectivity in China. You did seem like you were getting a bit kind of over it, or just wanted it over. You just wanted to just get the thing done and just sort of beat the record and go home. That was the sense.
I just want to add one thing about China. Like, the hotels there, so cheap, so good. You're coming.
Sold. I'm going.
You're coming. Yeah. You're coming from Central Asia, and sometime you like in Tajikistan. I remember spending 20 or 25 euros, which is not a lot of money, of course, I know, to sleep in dumps. But also spending 20 or 25 euros in any, like in different place of Central Asia, will get you like a really nice room, and in Tajikistan, not really. And then you get into China not long after that, and for 10 euros you have like this really big room, and everything is like so clean, nice, and fancy. So yeah, that's also one thing I really like about China, because I'm a big fan of hotels. Yeah, really, really great deals on hotels there. If you just spend 10 euros, you're gonna have like a really nice room. I was in a rush at that time. I mean, as soon as because I had also one mishap in Kyrgyzstan. I showed up at the Kyrgyz Kazakh border, and I showed up there at like 6:30 p.m. and closing time was 6 p.m. and I again lost some time. And yeah, I mean, after crossing Kyrgyzstan, I just looked at how many kilometers were left and how much time was left, and I was like, okay, I really, really need to rush. And so riding through China looked much more like an ultra cycling race than a bike touring trip. I was trying to be as efficient as possible. It's a shame, but I didn't really test the local cuisine. I would like ride through the day and then try when I was around 8 or 9 p.m. If I was in the town, I would try to find a hotel, and then I would just buy a ton of food in a shop somewhere, and then I would just eat like instant ramen in my hotel room, because I just had no time to find a restaurant to sit down and have a meal. So I would like boil some water, and then or actually a lot of water, and fill up 3 or 4 cups of instant noodles, and then let them sit while I was showering, and then I would come out of the shower and then eat my meal of instant ramen, and then just go to bed. And if the hotel had a breakfast, I would have obviously no time to sit down for this breakfast, because obviously I was just sleeping 6 hours and waking up before dawn to be on the road. So yeah, this China was pretty intense, really long hours. And yeah, at that time I knew that I couldn't afford to lose one more day. I could maybe afford to lose a couple of hours here and there, but a day was definitely not in the cards. The time that I had lost with my borders mishaps, and the fact that I would end up reaching Vladivostok after 18,000 kilometers, whereas Jonas had reached it after 16,000. Yeah, these 2,000 kilometers more. Yeah, it's a week of riding, and so at the beginning, I had a big gap over the record, but towards the end, I really needed to step on it to make it.
I guess, well, you cross Mongolia and then back into China again, and I guess, well, the bit that probably everyone wants to hear about, I guess that kind of explains to some level why you ended up making the decision you did when you came back crossing into Russia. The feeling on the race, you're on the race, on the clock, which I think quite often you do when you're doing these ultra races. And I think by this point for you, it's fair to say it probably was an ultra race. With that, the time limit coming. What happened at the Russian border? What was the initial issue which meant you had to kind of take the decision you did?
As I explained, the clock was running out. I was definitely not. I could not afford to lose more time. I already lost some time when I showed up at the first border that I had targeted in China to enter Russia, and then they told me that it was only for Russian and Chinese citizen, which is when you apply for the electronic visa, there's this list of checkpoints that you can cross the electronic visa with, but it does not specify if it's only binational, if it's like China and Russia. And it's actually much more complicated than that, because if I had showed up at this exact border checkpoint coming the other way, if I had wanted to exit Russia with my electronic visa in this town, it would have been possible, but it was not possible to exit China there for some reason. Again, things are just like obscure and complicated. But I showed up there, and when I showed up there, I was actually fine. If I had been able to cross there, then I would have ridden, I don't know, 100, maybe 120K to Vladivostok. I would have made it to Vladivostok with probably 36 hours ahead of the record, something like that. But then I got denied entry there. They told me you need to cross 60 kilometers north of here. And I went there, and the problem is the border there closes quite early, closes 5 p.m. And I showed up at 7 p.m. because, I had not planned to cross there. And it would come back to haunt me for a long time, because if I had showed up there at 5 instead of 7, then I would have found out everything about the complications of this border before, and then I would have been able to arrange for the crossing of this border during that time. But instead I showed up there at 7 p.m. Border was closed. I had to wait another 12 hours, which, as I said, I didn't really have a lot of time to lose at that time. And when I showed up in the morning there at 8 a.m., they told me, well, you have an electronic visa, so you cannot cross here with an electronic visa by road. The only way that you can cross is by train.
Would you have been okay if you'd have had your dual entry visa that you mentioned before earlier on? Would that have been okay?
I would have been okay. It was like a regular visa in my passport. I would have been okay to cross this border. Well, sort of okay, because it's, again, the same problem with the Chinese. They don't want you to ride from the checkpoint to from the border to the checkpoint. It's a big problem with China. But then, I would have found a solution. I'm sure. Like if I had been able just to clear immigration there and to exit, I would have found a solution to reach the Russian checkpoint and to cross the no man's land. But it would have been okay. It was like a regular visa. Electronic visa was not a possibility to cross by bus or by bike. And so they told me you need to cross with the train. But there's only one train a day, and it leaves in the morning. So when I reached the train station, it was too late, and the only solution at that point was to wait for the next train the next day. But then if I had done that, if I had waited for the next train, if I had boarded the train on the next day, I would have only had like 5 hours to ride to Vladivostok, and Vladivostok is 200K. And I think almost 2,000 meters of elevation from the border. And in 5 hours, it was just not possible. And so there I was. I was stuck at the border. I could cross it legally, but I could not cross it legally and then break the record. And then for me, it was like cross it legally and not break the record. I didn't really see the point, you know. I mean, the whole point of not the whole point, but reaching Vladivostok from where I was, the point was, you know, to set the new world record. And I sat there after I was close to the train station, and I sat there wondering what I should do, pondering, and yeah, I was like, should I get on a train to go the other way and start making my way back home? And it seemed like the logical option, but it's not something that I was able to do. I just like I didn't want to give up. I was actually unable to give up. And that's when I decided to try to cross the border illegally. And I mean, I knew it was stupid. I knew it was dangerous, but I just I was in a state of mind where I could not just keep sitting there being idle. I just needed to do something, because I knew like the end destination was just 200 kilometers away, and I knew that there was still time to reach it, and I was just like unable just to sit there and do nothing.
And did you know that there could be consequences for doing that? Was that a factor that you considered, or were you just so focused on the end goal that it wasn't, not that it didn't matter, but you were willing to kind of take that risk?
I knew there could be serious consequences. But when I'm saying serious consequences, for me, the worst that could happen would be like sitting 30 days in jail. I thought, you know, that's the worst case scenario. But then I kind of thought, you know, if they catch me, maybe I can tell them that I didn't do it on purpose, and maybe they'll believe me, and maybe they'll just like send me back to China straight away.
Do you
But
have like an exit flight from Vladivostok?
No, I was actually waiting to reach Vladivostok to buy a flight. But I mean, yeah, I knew. I mean, I acted in a stupid way, but I'm not a stupid person, and I knew that it was Russia, and it's not a country where you enter the country illegally, and they're cool with it, you know. So
What
I
actually
knew that
happened?
there could be consequences.
Did you just
Yeah.
literally just find a route on the map, or did you just straight line it, and then did
No,
you
I
kind
didn't.
of?
I didn't. There was no route on the map. I just at first I started to go north, and then they turned me back, tell me and which is not unusual in China, especially like in sensitive areas. They will just bar you from going forward on a road. It can happen. Well, I'm not going to say anywhere in China, but it can happen in China.
In the border zone, especially.
Especially in the border zone, and also in like some sensitive places. I guess. Well, I'm not a specialist on China, but especially like in Uyghur territory, like in Xinjiang, because it's a sensitive place, because they're afraid of some people that want autonomy for this territory, and so it's not unusual to get turned back when you're cycling somewhere on the road in China, and they turned me back, and then I was kind of expected that I was gonna get turned back once more as I tried to make my way south, but I actually was able to ride along the border going south, and there was a fence for probably 5 or 10 kilometers, and then there was no fence, and then there was this alley leading to a building, and so I rode on the alley, and then behind the building, it was just the forest. And I started walking through the forest, and I was just like shooting east, just like following a straight line to go east. And then at some point, there was a barbed wire fence, and there was a stream under the barbed wire fence. So walking in the stream was actually very easy to go under the fence. And I went under the fence, and then there was like this area that was where they had chopped down all the trees. So it was like open air area. You had this forest, and then complete an area where they could see you from miles away. And for some reason, they didn't see me, and that's where I got really unlucky, because it's a place where, you know, they're monitoring the border. It's the
So
actual
you were
border.
in Russia by this point?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah. It was like right after the barbed wire fence. So, but it's not actually the Russians monitoring the border. It's the Chinese. The Chinese monitor the border there, and I mean, I don't know why they did not see me. We came back with the Russian military the next day, because the Russian military wanted to see exactly where I had crossed, and they wanted to take pictures. And as soon as we showed up in this open air area, the Chinese military, they came out. There's a tent there, and they came out of the tent and just like they just like, yeah, watched us the whole time that we spent there with the Russian soldiers. So it's definitely an area that is constantly monitored. I don't know why they did not see me. I was pretty unlucky there. They should have seen me, and then
It was that
I
green
think
peddler
things-
jersey, camouflaged.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you
But-
actually report to the border crossing point?
So after walking, I don't know, close to 5 hours through that forest to make it to Russia, I ended up on the railway, on a railroad track, and I was walking on this railroad track because it was either the paved road, and I knew that on the paved road there would be a checkpoint, because I was still in the no man's land.
So you're all in by this point, I guess.
Yeah.
You're in deep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then I saw at some point that on the railroad that I was walking on, there was a checkpoint as well. And at that point, I think there was like 1 hour of daylight left, and I was facing either to avoid this checkpoint, I would have to go back in the forest, but I had no idea for how long, and there was just like 1 hour of daylight. And I was like, you know what? I think I tried everything to reach Vladivostok. I think now I can like give up without any regrets.
Wasn't
And,
much option by that
um,
choice either. By that point, was there?
Yeah, it would have been tricky just to go back in the forest in the dark. Would have been tricky to find my way. I mean, I think, I mean, in retrospect, I think it would have been possible, but I was obviously exhausted from 18,000 kilometers ridden in a couple months, and 5 hours hiking through a dense forest with a bike. And I decided, you know what, this has lasted for long enough, and I'm just gonna show up there at this railway checkpoint, and I'm
What
gonna
the hell
tell
do they
them that I
think?
got
some dude on a bike in like cycling shoes
Yeah.
and tight shorts just walked through the border. They must have had a bit of a shock.
Yeah, there's a good chance that it was the first time that it happened. But yeah,
Probably the last now too. They're on the lookout for it.
probably the last. Yeah, who knows?
I didn't
though?
realize
I mean,
this was
there's-
quite so. It's quite so hidden, and you really broke into Russia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation and some, well, like anything in the media, obviously your story's been everywhere, and there's been Chinese whispers a bit, and you know, even we didn't know what was going on, and Fanny didn't really know what had happened to her for a while. Who was kind of the source of most of the reliable information.
Basically, I told myself, you know, if I find a way, if I manage to like avoid detection and walk or ride past this checkpoint and make my way to Vladivostok or close to Vladivostok, and if I get caught there, then it will probably be bigger trouble than if I surrender now, close to the border, still in the no man's land, and pretend that I didn't do it on purpose. That was my thought process.
Yeah. So did they just literally arrest you on site, or?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, as soon as they got a hold of me, they were not gonna let me go. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I was not like officially under arrest, but I did sleep in a cell for a couple nights, and
I would say
every
that's
time.
arrested. To be fair, Sophian, sleeping in a cell is normally a sign you're under arrest.
Yeah, but I was not official. I didn't sign anything. They didn't hand me any documents. They actually officially arrested me 48 hours later. They really notified me that I was under arrest. But yeah, I was in effect under arrest as soon as I surrendered. And yeah, I told them that I didn't do it on purpose. And they didn't really buy it. And then they started sucking my electronics. They just like watched my GPS track. They watched my phone. They watched my GoPro footage. And like a really good influencer, I had documented all of the hike through the forest and crawling under the barbed wire fence and and walking on the train. So it was kind of hard to keep lying about.
Have you got this footage still?
No. They gave me the GoPro back, but anything that I shot in Russia, no, it didn't make it. Yeah. I mean, it was impossible to lie to them, even though they're not fluent in English. There was a couple people there that understood enough English to kind of figure out that this was not a mistake. This was on purpose.
And then, so I guess then you were kind of in the system, I guess. And were you moved then? You must have been moved to the pre-detention trial center.
So I was arrested. I slept one night in a cell. Then the next day, we went back on site with 3 soldiers. Spent another night in a cell. Was interrogated the second time, and then the next day they drove me to military facility, a different military facility, where I was officially put under arrest. Where they notified me that I was gonna be presented to a judge, and that the judge will send me to pre-trial detention facility, as they call it.
So prison, basically.
And prison. And I would spend 30 days in prison, and the reason that I would spend 30 days in prison is that they needed time to investigate my case. To be more precise, they didn't say pre-trial detention facility. They didn't say prison. They said, the investigators said special room.
Wow.
And I was like, special? What is special? And at first,
was it special?
Like, special room, okay.
It didn't sound hotels in China then.
It didn't sound too bad. When they told me you're gonna spend 30 days in a special room, I was like, okay, what kind of room is it gonna be? Is there gonna be like a desk and a bed and a table and a window? And it's like, and then I started chatting with the translator about the special room. I was like, what? How have you ever been to the special room? How is the special? How does it look like? And she was like, it's pretty much a prison. And I was like, okay, it's a prison. Then I realized, okay, it's a prison. And then
did it kind of hit you then, or were you well aware of what was going down?
Yeah. That's when I started to be in a sort of shock. And then I was like, my first question was like, am I going to be at least alone in this special room? And they're like, no, there's going to be like, I don't know, 5 or 6 people with you there. And then I was like in an even bigger state of shock. Because I started picturing Russian criminals and spending 30 days in a special room with them, and that's when I started being really, really worried. And then I asked if I could at least call my family, and they said no. And I was like, okay, things are really serious. And I was I was also trying to understand why they needed 30 days to investigate when they had my GPS track, they had my GoPro footage, and also I didn't lie, you know. I actually admitted to the fact that I illegally crossed the border, and I was like, why are they exactly investigating? You know, I mean, but that's Russian justice system, and that's the way they do things. And I did actually, yeah, for many nights in my cell. I was wondering why does it take so long to investigate something that is like so easy to figure out? They know everything, you know, but you know that's what happened.
Yeah. And how was life in prison? Was it, I guess, a good time to reflect and stuff, or we just did you have a goal? Like, I mean, you're one of the toughest guys mentally I know. I've seen you win some of these big races, and you know, I think quite often it's your mental state, and I was hoping that, you know, that would bring you through. Was it tough, or did you have kind of like a strategy to cope or goals to aim for?
There were 3 different periods in my detention. There was like the first like 8 to 9 days, which were very difficult because every day I would wake up in the cell, and every day I would have to cope with the fact that I was incarcerated, which is something I never thought would happen in my life, because you know I'm just like a regular, honest citizen.
From crossing borders illegally.
Yeah, who bribes well-raised staff in Uzbekistan to cross just a regular citizen, just like nothing wrong. But yeah, prison was never part of the plan, and I was waking up in a cell every day, and for about like a bit more than a week, it really hit hard. I had to just like get to adjust to the fact that I was not free anymore, to adjust to the fact that there was a big metal door between me and the outside, and there was a window with 3 different set of bars, and but then after 8 or 9 days, I started trying to get back control of my life and organizing my daily life, and started writing about the journey, about the world record attempt. Also started writing letters to Fanny. I would write her every day, which in effect was kind of a diary of my detention, because I would tell her a lot of stuff that were just happening to me in my daily life in prison. And I started also exercising. I could not ride my bike, but I could exercise, doing like push-ups and stuff like that. So, and yeah, just trying not to spend all of my days on my little cot there on my mattress, with my eyes closed. I mean, there was a lot of this, and I guess in the first days where I would just lying down waiting for time to pass, because I was just like in this state of shock. And then after this initial pretty difficult phase, I was like, okay, I have like a month or two to be there. I cannot spend a month or two just looking at the ceiling, and I have to do something. And that was
Did you know that?
I think
Did
that's
you know
when
that
the
was a
first
timescale?
stage was over.
Sorry, I was going to say, did you know that was a timescale?
I was
there
hoping.
kind of
I was hoping
something in
that
place?
it would be the timescale.
Yeah, when we spoke to Fanny, obviously you had your kind of trial, and then kind of that was, you got, you know, put away for a few more weeks. But it seemed, certainly after we spoke to Fanny the other week, and certainly talking to her, you know, once we'd stopped recording, she seemed very confident that it was just part of the process. I don't know if it was her coping? It would have been, to a certain extent, but did you have a similar feeling that you knew that this was a process? You had this trial, you'd probably be there for a while, and then you'd either get the yes or the no verdict. In the main trial, was that something that you could work to as a schedule?
That's what I wanted to believe. I wanted to. I mean, I'm by nature I'm an optimist, and so I had this diary where I was writing all the days, and for me, I had a good hope that I would be released on October 4th, when so at the end of the 30 days, that they would investigate, that the investigation would be over, and that they would try me, and that then they would release me. That's what I wanted to believe. And then, of course, there were times where it was hard to just be and be optimistic and just keep believing. There were 2 days that were really hard during the time that I spent in jail. And the first day was when I found out that the maximum that they could sentence me to was 2 years in prison. And I think I found this out towards the end of September, after maybe a bit less than 3 weeks in prison. That's when I found out.
That was
And then I was like,
headlines,
okay, it's
like, in the media.
it's pretty serious. 2 years. It means that they think that it's quite a big offense, and 2 years is really, really long time. It's like such a long time.
2 years
And
would have been if they'd found you guilty of what?
so afterwards, I found out that 2 years, if they would have found me guilty of entering Russia illegally with aggravating circumstances, like conspiring to do so, or doing so while exerting violence on, I don't know, guards or people or whatever. But that's something that I only found out much later during my detention. But when I was handed over the decision from the judge, the translated decision from the judge to send me to pretrial detention facility, I could only read that I was facing 2 years, because I did not know at that time that there were 3 different circumstances for the law that I had broken, which is law 322, and then there is like one configuration, another, and then a third one, and the third one like is the one that you don't want to be involved in, because that's when you can be sent to prison for a couple years. But I just read this paper. I just read that it was phrased in a way to say that if your crime, because they call it a crime, if your crime as a sentence that is a maximum of less than 3 years, then you're not going to be sent to pretrial detention facility. But since I didn't have an address in Russia, that's why they sent me there. But yeah, what I read when I read this was just like maximum of 2 years, and I was like, okay, that's a long time to spend in prison. And I had a really, really bad day this day, because that's when I realized what was the worst case scenario. And actually, other people would argue that's not even the worst case scenario, because it is Russia, and because they could actually like make up charges.
Yeah,
and
I think
say that you're.
when we talked to Fanny, there was mention that you could have been accused of attempting to spy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not something that they need to prove, But for me, I didn't want to believe that they were gonna go this way. So I was still thinking that worst case scenario was 2 years. But yeah, again, other people will tell you that it could have been even much, much worse. That they could have made up charges and add them to my case. But and then the second day that was really, really hard for me was when they prolonged my detention. It was not hard because I went back to jail and I was like, I'm back in jail. I thought I was gonna go out. It was hard because basically the first time they sent me to jail, the reason was because I didn't have like an address in somewhere in Russia where they could just contact me and just made sure that I would stay there. But the second time, my lawyer actually had found me a place to live, and she had all the proper documents. And still, they sent me back to jail, and I was like, I don't understand. Are they judging me within Russian law or just outside of the boundaries of Russian law? And then I was like, okay, if what they're doing is outside of the boundaries of law, then they can do pretty much anything, And that's what was really worrying me at the time. I was like the tensions between Russia and France. Maybe they're just gonna play a bad part in my case. Maybe I'm not gonna be treated as just like a common criminal, but I'm gonna be treated as a pawn on the geopolitical chessboard. And I had a really, really bad night this night. But then, as I said, I'm an optimist, and then I just started fighting back. All of the bad thoughts that I had, just trying to find good thoughts to oppose to them, and I had, so stage 2 was being uncertain of what was going to happen, and just trying to stay positive and just like trying to see signs that I was going to go back home. And then after a little bit more than a month in detention, they completed the investigation, and they presented the results of the investigation to my lawyer and me. And that's when I kind of guessed that I was not gonna be sentenced to time in prison, but I was gonna be sentenced to a fine. And then the last part of my detention, I would say the last couple of weeks or so, I was definitely not as worried, and I was just like waiting for the date of my trial.
What was the official outcome of the trial once that came?
So I was found guilty, which was no surprise because I pleaded guilty. I pleaded guilty to the charges, and I was sentenced to a 50,000 ruble fine, which is around 500 euros. And I didn't have to pay the fine because I spent 50 days in pretrial detention, and so the judge found that it was punishment enough. Yeah, I would argue that it is. I would argue that is ample punishment actually for just crossing the border illegally. But yeah, I didn't have to pay the fine.
And then you were just sent on your way, basically sent to Vladivostok and home in a couple of days.
And then that's where all the work that my lawyer put in, and all the work that I put in as well, I think that's when it paid off, because instead of being sent to another detention facility for migrants waiting to be kicked out of Russian territory, I was allowed to book my own ticket outside of Russia and just like leave Russia as soon as I wanted to, which was the next day. And when I said my work, so my lawyer did work with the investigators to make sure that this would be possible, and my work started as soon as I was arrested. And it's just like my work was just to make sure that I was always on everyone's good side, always be friendly with everyone, and always just tell them that, I mean, even though it took them 40 days to pretty much present a file to the judge that was saying what I was saying from the beginning, I tell them, wow, thank you for working so fast. And it's really nice that you're this effective and that we're already, ready to face trial because, good job taking less than 2 months to complete the investigation. But yeah, I mean, I just all of the investigators that I talked to right off the bat, I was just like friendly, going their way when they asked me what I thought about the war in Ukraine. Obviously, I told them that yeah, they had good reasons to go there, which is not true at all. But yeah, I mean, I acted in a foolish way to start with, and then I got my wits back, and I think I just started acting smart, and I was like, these are the people that are there to determine if I'm a criminal or if I'm a spy or if I'm just a regular guy that needs to go back home. So I'm just gonna stay on their good side, and I think it actually played a part in the outcome. Maybe not in the outcome in the trial, but in the outcome in the fact that I was allowed to go home right after the trial.
Yeah, and made your life easier in prison, I guess, to a certain extent as well.
I think what made my life easier in prison was the media. I got media attention in Russia. There were journalists in Russia that were talking about my case, and I think that the prison, the administration of the prison, didn't want to get a bad rap in the media, and when they noticed that I had a lot of media attention in well, maybe not Russia wide, but at least in to like around Vladivostok, when they noticed that I had this attention, that's when they were like regularly checking on me, like there was like this officer from the prison guards, like a higher rank. He was like regularly checking that everything was fine, that I had everything that I needed, that if I was sick, I would get treatment, and that it would yeah, just that everything was fine with my cellmates and everything. So towards the end, I would say like the second half of my detention, I was definitely a special prisoner getting special attention.
Oh, cool. Now, one thing I want to ask you is, in your trial, I saw you sat there in the kind of, the cage where the prisoner's
The
kept,
cage, yeah.
and you had your cycling shoes on, obviously with the laces cut off. My question is, did you have to wear those for your whole detention? Because I've just got this picture of you like clip-clopping around prison in your physique cycling shoes.
No, actually, I had pool sandals throughout my detention. The prison administration doesn't really care about you. They don't give you anything, but there's this solidarity between inmates. And when I showed up in my first cell, I only stayed 24 hours in my first cell. There was like 7 other inmates, and they saw with my cycling shoes, and they like immediately gave me some pool sandals. But yeah, they also shaved my head and my beard, and it's a different life in there. It's you need to learn everything. You need to learn all the codes. You need to, and sometimes it varies from one cell to another. So you learn a bunch of stuff, and then you transfer it to another cell, and you need to learn more. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say that the inmates, they tend to stick together and to look after each other.
Would you say, I know it might sound a bit silly, but would you say it was a net positive experience and kind of a good sort of learning thing, spending that time in prison?
I would say that it was not completely negative. I mean, obviously, if I could go back and take a different decision than illegally crossing the border, I would do it. I would just give up and not go to prison. But I'm not going to say that all of it was bad, you know? And there were some good moments in there in the cell, and there were some, funny ones, and I met some. Um, I don't know if I can say good people because they're still criminals, but I met some people that were actually still friendly with me, and I
I
did
guess so.
learn a lot.
When you're in a
You know,
cell, you're on the same level, isn't it? It's kind of doesn't matter if you're a criminal or not. You're still in a cell, so you've got that kind of rapport and that connection with the other person.
yes, and I mean, even if they're criminals, they're not they're not all bad. They did commit one crime, and sometimes it's just like one silly, not very very serious thing, and sometimes they're like facing a long long time in prison for this, which is a shame. I mean, I was incarcerated with an 18-year-old kid who got caught for selling less than 10 grams of amphetamines, and he was going to spend a minimum of 15 years in prison.
Jeez.
And we're talking about a kid, 18 years old. He was like literally a kid. So yeah, you witness these situations, and it can be quite hard, but you also find that these are criminals, but you have a lot of compassion because you're living the same way, and you're like, I mean, obviously hoping that I would only spend a couple months there, and I was thinking about the fact that in 5 years they would still be there, maybe not in this exact jail, but somewhere locked up, some in Russia, being somewhere, and not being able to see their loved ones, and it's not like before being sent there, I'd taken time to reflect about what prison is. So I never really thought about that. But now that I have been in there, I'm like, this is more than just not being free.
Yeah.
It's not having control of your life. It's being humiliated on a daily basis by the system. It's not being with your loved ones ever. And I think it's probably the worst part of being in prison. It's just like you just cut off from all of the people that matters.
Makes you kind of realize what you've got.
Of course it does.
life.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's as I said, it's not a positive experience, but it's not all bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everyone, a lot of people listening, there's been a lot of concern for you while you've been locked up. So I guess we're all happy you're out. And I guess, how does that make you feel now about the races and the records? Is it
More
put you off,
determined
or-
than ever, actually? Because
we're in
if
trouble
there's
then.
one thing that I found in prison is, like, lately, my ultracycling career, I was struggling to find the motivation, because, as you know, this is such a hard sport. It's so mentally taxing, that sometimes, yeah, you have these moments during a race where you kind of give up for a few hours because you find that is too hard, and instead of keeping going, you just stop, even though you could actually keep going. And I think, I hope that at least the next time that I'm facing such a situation where, I don't know, it's late, it's cold, it's dark, it's rainy, and I could keep going, and instead I find like a warm place to spend, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours. I'm hoping that, yeah, instead of just like having this time where I kind of give up for a few hours, I will keep going, because I will be able to tell myself, this sucks, but this is, first of all, a situation that I chose. I have control of my life, and I'm still free, and I'm still outside, and I'm still doing the things the thing that I love the most in the world, which is riding a bike, and it's still much 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 better than being in prison.
So with that in mind, do you have some goals set, or is it still too early?
No, it's too early. I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do next year. I still have time. It's still November. I don't have to pick a race now. But yeah, I'm sure that I will find some exciting goals, and I'm really looking forward just to go out there with this. I think that I did come out of prison stronger than I came in, and I'm just like, yeah, looking forward to go out and race with this newfound mental strength.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. I maybe don't, because I might be on the receiving end of it, but but yeah, well, I think, like I said, I think we're all very happy you're out, and yeah, the legend of
Thanks.
Sophian continues.
Yeah.
So well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure
My
to have
pleasure.
you on and talk to you and hear all about the story. And I guess we'll see you out at an event at some point soon.
Yeah, sure.
And hopefully everyone's enjoyed listening to this and hearing the story, hearing it from you as well, because you've got a lot of media coverage, and you get Chinese whispers in the media about what's actually going on and what's actually you've been charged with, and you're not necessarily a spy that's going to prison for 20 years, as I think I read somewhere. So we're just glad you're out. And with that, I think we should wrap up this podcast. It's been a bit of a long one, so if you're still listening, then thanks. And I guess we'll see you next month for the final one of the year. So, Beccy, as always, thanks for joining us, and Sophian, thank you too.
Thank you, Sofiane, for giving me so much detail as well.
Excellent. See you all soon.
See you. Bye.